The mirror in the greatest and most dangerous witch castell did not break quietly. It fractured, deep, violently this time. The cracks spread across its surface in jagged lines, dark energy seeping through them like something alive was forcing its way out, distorting the reflection beyond recognition. Seraphine stepped back instinctively. "That's not normal," she said. Morrigan was already moving, faster than before. No hesitation. Her shadows surged outward, wrapping around the mirror like chains, pulling tight, containing the fracture before it could spread further. "It found us," she said. Seraphine's breath slowed. "You said it couldn't. I was wrong. That alone. That was enough to change everything." Because Morrigan did not say that. Ever. The mirror pulsed again, hard. The cracks deepened. And then something pushed through. Not fully, not completely, but enough. A shape, distorted, watching. Seraphine felt it instantly. The mark flared. Not painfully, hungrily. "It's calling me again," she said. Morrigan's voice snapped instantly. "You don't answer. I'm not trying to." Then stop responding. "That's not how this works." Morrigan turned sharply. "And how would you know?" Silence. Because she didn't. Because neither of them did. And that was the problem. The mirror cracked again. Wider. The shape inside shifted closer, clearer now, more defined than before. Not a reflection. Not a shadow. Something else. Something that knew her. Seraphine's breath caught. "I felt this before." Morrigan's gaze snapped to her. No, Seraphine didn't look away from the mirror. "I have that made something in Morrigan snap." She moved instantly. Her hand grabbed Seraphine's wrist, pulling her back with force, dragging her away from the mirror. "You don't go near it," Seraphine frowned. "You're hurting me." "Good. That came too fast. Too sharp. Too real." Silence hit between them. Seraphine blinked. Wow. Morrigan's grip loosened slightly. Not fully. Just enough. "That wasn't—" "I know what it was," Seraphine said quietly. "And that hit harder than anything else." The mirror surged again. Violently this time. The shadows holding it began to strain, crack, flicker under the pressure of whatever was trying to break through. Morrigan's expression changed. Not calm. Not controlled. "Dangerous. Stay behind me," she said. Seraphine blinked. That definitely sounded like concern. It's control. That sounded worse. "I don't care." And this time, she meant it. The mirror exploded outward, not physically, energetically. A burst of dark force tore through the room, shattering the containment, sending shards of shadow and reflections scattering across the space. The creature stepped through, not fully formed, but real enough, tall, distorted, watching. And this time, it didn't hesitate. It looked straight at Seraphine. "You came back." The voice wasn't sound. It was inside. Seraphine froze. "What?" Morrigan stepped in front of her. Immediately. No hesitation, no thought. Fully blocking her from it. "You don't speak to her." The creature didn't react. Didn't even acknowledge her. It looked past her. "You don't remember." Seraphine's breath caught. Something flickered, a memory, not clear, not complete, but enough to make her hesitate. Morrigan saw it, and something inside her turned cold. "What did you feel?" she asked. Seraphine didn't answer. Because she didn't know how. Because she didn't understand it. Because part of her didn't want to. The creature stepped closer. The room darkened with it. The air thickened. The connection tightened. "You belong here." That changed everything. Seraphine's voice dropped. "No?" But it wasn't strong. And Morrigan heard it, felt it, understood it. Her hand tightened around Seraphine's wrist. Harder? "You don't belong to anything," she said. But her voice wasn't steady. The creature moved again. Closer, stronger. The mark flared violently. The connection surged. And for a moment, Seraphine didn't pull away. That was it. That was the moment. Morrigan's expression changed instantly. Something colder, sharper, more dangerous than before. "What are you?" she said quietly. Not to the creature, to her. Seraphine looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, she didn't have an answer. The room trembled, the shadows surged. The creature shifted again, and Morrigan stepped forward, not back, not away. Forward, fully. Her power exploded outward, darker than before, sharper, more aggressive, slamming into the creature with force, pushing it back toward the broken mirror. "You don't get to take her," she said. That was not strategy. That was not control. That was personal. The creature recoiled slightly, not defeated, but resisted. "You cannot stop what she is." Morrigan's eyes darkened. "Watch me." The shadows surged again, stronger, violent, forcing the creature back, piece by piece, until the mirror snapped closed again, sealing the fracture just enough to hold. Silence fell, heavy, unstable. Seraphine's breathing was uneven now. Morrigan didn't look at her. That word, that tone, said everything. Because she had. Because she chose to. Because this was no longer just about control. The mark pulsed again. Soft, steady. But this time, it felt different. Because now, the danger wasn't just the connection. It was what it meant. Seraphine's voice dropped. "It knows me." Morrigan's answer came quieter. "Yes." A pause. Then, "And I don't, that was worse." Because for the first time, Morrigan wasn't the one in control, and whatever this was, it had just made that very clear. The castle settled slowly around them, the shadows pulling back to their corners like they were exhausted, the air becoming something close to breathable again. The mirror stood cracked and sealed and silent. Whatever had been on the other side of it was gone for now. Not gone permanently, just gone. Seraphine stood where she was, her wrist still tingling where Morrigan had gripped it, her breathing uneven in a way she couldn't fully control. She looked at the mirror, then at Morrigan's back, then at the mark on her wrist, which was pulsing softly now, steadily, like it had found something to settle into. "It called me by name," she said quietly. Morrigan didn't turn around. "Not out loud," Seraphine continued. "Inside, like it already knew me, like it had been waiting." She looked up. "You knew that was going to happen." "No," Morrigan said, "but you knew something was going to happen." Silence, which was its own answer. Seraphine exhaled slowly. "Then tell me what you do know." Her voice wasn't sharp, wasn't demanding, just quiet and steady and completely done with waiting. "All of it, right now. Because that thing just walked through your mirror and spoke to me like I belonged to it, and I am not going to stand here and let you decide what I'm ready to hear." Morrigan was quiet for a long moment before she spoke. Not the controlled silence she usually wore like armor. Something different, something that cost her. "They wanted power," she said. That was always what it came down to. Power they didn't earn and couldn't understand. Seraphine didn't speak. She could feel that this was different from everything before. That whatever came next had been buried for a very long time. "There was something living in this land," Morrigan continued. "Not a person, not a creature. Something older than any of that. Something that had been here before the first stone was laid, before the first wall was built, before your kingdom had a name. It was woven into the earth itself, into the air, into everything." Seraphine's breath slowed. "My grandmother knew what it was," Morrigan said. "She was a keeper, one of the last ones. People who understood the old things, who protected them, who made sure they were never touched by people who would use them badly." She stopped for a moment. They took her. 2 words, quiet, final, carrying more weight than anything else she had said. "Your kingdom's people found her. They knew what she was. They knew she was connected to that ancient thing by blood and by years of care and by something that can't be explained in any language your kingdom speaks, and they decided that connection was exactly what they needed." Seraphine felt something cold move through her chest. "They performed a ritual," Morrigan said. "They used her blood to force open something that was never meant to be opened, something that had stayed quiet and hidden and safe for longer than anyone could remember." "I was there," she said after a moment. Her voice had dropped to almost nothing. "I was young. I ran when I heard what they were planning. I thought if I got there fast enough I could stop it. I thought—" She stopped. "I wasn't fast enough." Seraphine didn't move, didn't breathe too loudly, didn't do anything that might break whatever was happening in this moment. "After she was gone," Morrigan continued, What they released didn't give them what they wanted. It never does. Things that old don't serve people. They don't give power. They just get free. And when something that ancient and that broken gets free, it doesn't rest. It searches for what it lost, for what was taken from it. The curse wasn't punishment, Morrigan said. Not entirely. It was containment. I sealed the kingdom because I had to seal what was spreading through it. Because what they released was moving through the land and through the people, and if I hadn't stopped it... She exhaled slowly. Maybe I wanted to punish them too, she admitted. Maybe both things were true at the same time. I stopped trying to separate them a long time ago. Seraphine looked at her. And me. Morrigan met her eyes directly. Your family was there that night, she said. They were part of the ritual. They knew what was being done. They knew what my grandmother was and what her blood would cost, and they were there anyway. Seraphine's breath caught. Whatever my grandmother carried, Morrigan said quietly, whatever made her a keeper, whatever connected her to that ancient thing, it didn't disappear when they killed her. Things like that don't just end. They move. They find new places to rest. She held Seraphine's gaze. It moved through the people who were there that night, through their blood, through their children and their children's children, changing slightly with each generation, becoming something quieter, something hidden. Seraphine's voice was barely there. Until me. Until you, Morrigan said. You didn't choose this. You didn't know. But what you carry is real, and that creature in the mirror knows it. That's why it called to you. That's why it said you belong there. Because part of what my grandmother protected is still inside you, and it recognizes itself. Silence fell between them. Real silence. The kind that comes after something true has finally been said out loud. Seraphine looked down at the mark on her wrist. The thing that had burned and pulled and connected her to this woman she was supposed to fear. You should have told me from the beginning, she said softly. You would have run, Morrigan replied. Seraphine looked up at her. Maybe. You would have, Morrigan said. Not unkindly, just honestly. Seraphine didn't argue, because she probably would have, before all of this. Before the castle and the bird and the mirror, and every moment that had slowly made the impossible feel ordinary. So what do we do? She asked. Morrigan's expression settled into something that wasn't quite certainty, but was close to it. We stop it, she said, together, before it finishes what they started that night. Seraphine nodded once, slowly, steadily. Together, she repeated, and neither of them looked away. The truth did not leave the room. It stayed, not loud, not overwhelming, just present, like something that had settled between them and refused to move. Seraphine didn't speak immediately. She stood there, her thoughts slower now and heavier, trying to rearrange everything she had just heard into something that made sense, into something that didn't feel like the ground beneath her had shifted completely. I'm what's left, she said quietly, not as a question, as something she was still trying to accept. Morrigan didn't correct her, didn't soften it, didn't take it back. Yes, that word should have felt harsh, but it didn't. It felt honest. Seraphine exhaled slowly, her gaze lowering for just a moment before lifting again. That explains the mark, she said. Morrigan's eyes moved briefly to her wrist. It explains why I reacted to you. She paused. And why I couldn't ignore it. Seraphine noticed that. Of course she did. Her head tilted slightly. You keep saying things like that. Morrigan's gaze narrowed faintly. Like what? Like you had a choice. I didn't. Seraphine stepped a little close, not because of pain, because she wanted to understand. You did, she said softly. Morrigan didn't respond, because that was becoming harder to deny. The castle remained quiet around them, the tension from before no longer sharp but not gone either. It had changed, shifted into something quieter that didn't press outward but stayed close like it was waiting. Seraphine moved slowly, her fingers brushing lightly along the edge of a nearby stone surface, grounding herself in something real. So all this time, she said, you weren't trying to destroy the kingdom. Morrigan's voice was steady. I was trying to keep something worse from breaking through. Seraphine nodded faintly. And I've been helping it. The words felt heavier than she expected. Morrigan's gaze sharpened slightly. You didn't know. That doesn't change what it is. It changes everything. Seraphine looked at her. You're defending me. I'm stating a fact. That sounded like defending. It wasn't. Seraphine's lips curved faintly. You're doing it again. Morrigan didn't respond, but she didn't look away either. The mark pulsed softly, not painful, almost warm. Seraphine frowned slightly, her hand lifting instinctively to her wrist. "It feels different," she said. Morrigan noticed immediately. "How?" Seraphine hesitated. "Not like it's pulling me anymore." She paused. "Like it's settled." Morrigan stepped closer slowly, her gaze fixed on the mark, her attention sharper now. "That shouldn't happen," she said. Seraphine glanced at her. "You say that a lot. This time it matters?" "That's also something you say a lot." Morrigan ignored that. Her hand lifted slightly, then stopped just before touching her, and that moment didn't go unnoticed. Seraphine's eyes moved to her hand, then back to her face. "You hesitated," she said softly. Morrigan's hand lowered slightly. "No, you did. I didn't. You're doing it again. That's not what this is." Seraphine stepped closer, closing the distance herself this time. "Then what is it?" Morrigan didn't move, didn't step back, didn't create space. Her voice dropped. "Uncertainty. That was new." Seraphine blinked once. "You don't like that. I don't. Because you're not in control. I am in control." Seraphine's lips curved faintly. "You keep saying that." She paused. "But you're still here." That landed again, because it was still true. Because she hadn't left. Because she wasn't leaving. The air between them shifted. Not tense. Not sharp. Something quieter and closer. Seraphine's voice softened. "You could have walked away," she said. Morrigan didn't answer immediately. Because she could have. Because she should have. Because she hadn't. "Yes," she said finally. Seraphine tilted her head slightly. "But you didn't. No." That word stayed. Because it wasn't forced. Because it wasn't defensive. Because it was real. Seraphine took another small step closer. They were close again now, not as tense as before, not as sharp, just close. "Why?" she asked. Morrigan's gaze flickered, not away, just less guarded. "Because leaving doesn't change what you are," she said. Seraphine held her gaze. "That's not what I meant." Morrigan knew. Of course she did. And that made it harder. Because this question wasn't about magic, wasn't about the curse, wasn't about the kingdom. It was about her. And she didn't have an answer she could say out loud. "You don't need that answer," she said. Seraphine didn't step back. "I do." Silence stretched long and heavy because now there was nowhere to hide. Morrigan exhaled slowly. "Because I couldn't," she said. Seraphine's brow furrowed slightly. "Couldn't what?" Morrigan's voice lowered. "Leave you." That was it. That was the shift. The one that couldn't be taken back. The one that changed everything. Seraphine's breath caught slightly. Not dramatic, not obvious, but enough. "That sounds like a choice," she said quietly. Morrigan didn't deny it because she couldn't. Because it was. The silence that followed was different, not tense, not sharp, not heavy, just close. Seraphine's voice softened. "You said you tried to kill me," she said. Morrigan's gaze didn't leave hers. "I did, and now you're keeping me alive." Morrigan didn't answer, because that was also true. Seraphine stepped just slightly closer. There was no space left now. Her voice dropped. "You're not very consistent." Morrigan's lips parted slightly, not to argue, not to respond, just because she had nothing to say. And that was rare, Seraphine noticed. Of course she did. Her lips curved faintly. "That's new." Morrigan's gaze flickered briefly. "You're not helping. That's not my job. It should be. Why?" Morrigan didn't answer, because she didn't know how to say it, because saying it meant something she wasn't ready to face. Because it wasn't just about control anymore. It wasn't just about magic. It wasn't just about the mark. It was her. The mark pulsed again, soft and steady, and this time it didn't interrupt. Didn't hurt. Didn't pull. It aligned. Seraphine felt it. "It's calmer," she said. Morrigan's voice was quieter now. "So are you." Seraphine looked at her. "So are you." That almost felt like something else. Something lighter. Something warmer. Something neither of them had planned for and neither of them was ready to name. Seraphine's gaze dropped slightly, then lifted again. "What happens when this ends?" she asked. Morrigan didn't answer immediately, because she hadn't thought that far, because she didn't want to, because ending meant leaving and distance and silence, things she suddenly wasn't sure she wanted. "It doesn't," she said finally. Seraphine's brow lifted slightly. "That's not reassuring." It's not meant to be, a breath passed between them. Some things don't end cleanly. Seraphine studied her for a moment longer. You're not planning to let me go, are you? Morrigan's gaze didn't waver. No, that should have sounded like a threat, but it didn't. It didn't feel like one, and that was the problem. The silence settled again, softer this time and closer, like something fragile had formed between them without either of them noticing exactly when it happened. Seraphine exhaled slowly. This is complicated, she said. Morrigan's voice was quiet. Yes, Seraphine's lips curved faintly. You're terrible at this. At what? This. Morrigan frowned slightly. That's not helpful. It wasn't meant to be. You're worse. Seraphine let out a quiet breath that almost turned into a laugh. That sounds like improvement. Morrigan didn't respond, but she didn't disagree either. The mark pulsed again, soft and steady, and this time neither of them reacted, because now it wasn't just something they were dealing with. It was something they were starting to accept. Even if neither of them had said it out loud yet. Seraphine's voice dropped slightly. We're going to have to stop it, she said. Morrigan nodded faintly. We will. Together. That word stayed. Because it wasn't necessary, because it wasn't strategic, because it wasn't forced. It was chosen. And that made it dangerous. Because now it wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something neither of them had planned for. And neither of them was ready to lose. The quiet did not last. It never did. Not in a place like this. Seraphine felt it before anything happened. Not the mark. Not the connection. Something else. A shift. Subtle and wrong. Her gaze moved toward the far side of the chamber, her posture tightening slightly as the stillness in the air changed. We're not alone, she said. Morrigan was already moving. Her shadows stretched outward instantly, sweeping through the room and pressing into every corner. Stay behind me, she said. Seraphine didn't argue. The air flickered just once. Then a figure appeared. Not fully, not clearly, but enough. A messenger, one of the kingdom's guards, breathing hard, terrified, and very clearly not supposed to be there. Seraphine froze. What is he doing here? Morrigan's voice dropped instantly. He shouldn't be. The guard looked between them, his expression caught between fear and urgency. My lady, he started, his voice shaking. Morrigan's shadows tightened instantly. You don't speak to her, the guard faltered. But Seraphine stepped forward slightly. Let him speak, she said. Morrigan's gaze snapped to her. No, Seraphine didn't look at her. I said, let him speak. Silence fell, sharp and tight. Then Morrigan stepped back, not far, but enough. The guard swallowed hard. They found it, he said. Seraphine's brow furrowed. Found what? The guard hesitated. The letter. Silence fell immediately because that word didn't belong here. Seraphine's expression didn't change outwardly, but something inside her shifted. What letter? Morrigan said. Her voice was calm, too calm. The guard glanced at her, then back at Seraphine. The one you sent, he said, and everything stopped. Seraphine didn't move, didn't react, didn't deny it. That was the first mistake, or maybe the final one. Morrigan's gaze shifted slowly toward her, sharp, focused, dangerous. What is he talking about? She said. Seraphine's voice was quiet. It's nothing. The wrong answer. Morrigan stepped closer. Nothing, she repeated. Seraphine didn't look at her. It doesn't matter. It matters now. The mark pulsed hard and sharp, not painful but wrong, because the tension between them had changed, because something had broken. The guard swallowed again. They're coming, he said quickly. The council, the soldiers, they think. Enough, Morrigan said. The word cut through the room instantly, because she didn't need to hear the rest, because she already understood. Her gaze didn't leave Seraphine. You called them, she said, not a question, a statement. Seraphine's jaw tightened slightly, but she didn't deny it. You brought them here, Morrigan continued. Her voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be, because the quiet was worse. Seraphine finally looked at her. For a moment, something almost broke through. Something real, something honest. But she pushed it down hard. I had to, she said. That did it. Morrigan's expression didn't explode, didn't shatter. It went still, completely still, and that was worse. You had to, Morrigan repeated. Seraphine held her gaze. They would have come anyway. That's not what I asked. Silence stretched between them. You think I didn't know what you are, Seraphine said. Morrigan didn't move. You think I would just trust you. The words came colder now, sharper, deliberate. You marked me, Seraphine continued. You dragged me here. You expect me to just stay. Morrigan's gaze darkened. That's not what this was. Seraphine let out a quiet breath. That's exactly what it was. That wasn't entirely true. But she said it anyway. Because she had to. Because if she didn't, she wouldn't be able to do what came next. Morrigan stepped closer. Slow, controlled. Dangerous? You lied, she said. Seraphine didn't respond. You stayed here, Morrigan continued. You stood in front of me. You let me believe this was something else. That was the real accusation. And Seraphine felt it deep, but she didn't show it. It was never anything, she said. The words came clean and cold and sharp, and completely wrong. Morrigan's expression shifted just slightly, but enough. Because that one hurt. You used me, Morrigan said. Seraphine held her gaze, didn't look away, didn't hesitate. Yes. Total silence, complete, because that was the moment everything broke. The mark flared violently. For the first time it hurt. Sharp and deep, like something had been torn apart from the inside. Seraphine's breath hitched slightly, but she didn't move, didn't react, didn't give it away. Morrigan stepped back, not forced, not pushed. She chose it, slowly, deliberately, like she was putting distance where it didn't belong. You should have died the first time I saw you, she said. The words came quiet, but they cut. Seraphine's chest tightened just slightly, but she didn't show it. You should have tried harder, she replied. That sealed it. The air shifted violently. The connection snapped, not fully but enough to hurt, enough to break whatever fragile thing had been forming between them. Morrigan's shadows rose, not controlled, not calm, angry. For the first time truly angry. When they come, she said, I won't stop them. Seraphine didn't move, didn't speak, didn't react. Morrigan looked at her one last time. Not with curiosity, not with tension, not with anything that had been there before, just distance, cold, final. Then she disappeared. The room fell completely silent. The guard stood frozen and terrified. He was young, younger than she remembered, standing in the middle of something he didn't understand. In a castle he should never have been able to reach, looking at her like she was a stranger. Maybe she was. My lady, he said quietly, what have you done? Seraphine's eyes closed slowly. Her hand tightened at her side. The mark burned, not from magic, from something else, something worse. What I had to, she said quietly, but this time it didn't sound convincing, even to her, because the truth was she hadn't just pushed Morrigan away. She had broken something. Something that was just starting to matter. And the worst part wasn't the mark burning. It wasn't Morrigan's silence. It wasn't even the look on her face before she disappeared. It was that Seraphine had done it on purpose. She had pushed her away deliberately. Because whatever was coming through that mirror, whatever had spoken to her like it already owned her, she wasn't going to let it reach Morrigan too. Even if Morrigan never knew that, even if she hated her for it forever, some things were worth breaking to protect what mattered, even when what mattered was the one you just hurt. She had sent the letter on the second night, before the bird revealed its secrets, before the backstory, before any of it had become real. She had found a crack in the castle wall where moonlight came through and pressed the folded paper into the hand of a shadow that moved differently from the others. Not Morrigan's shadows. Something older. Something that remembered the kingdom. She hadn't known then what she knows now. That was the part that made it worse. She had sent it before she understood, and she couldn't take it back. She had made it as far as the edge of the forest. Morrigan had left the castle with every intention of staying gone, of putting enough distance between herself and everything that had just happened that she could breathe again, that she could think again, that she could remember who she was before a woman with a mark on her wrist walked into her castle and made the word impossible feel ordinary. She made it to the edge of the forest, and then she felt it. The connection surged violently, the mark burning at a distance now, different from before, desperate in a way it had never been. And beneath the magic, beneath the connection, beneath everything she could name and explain and control, something else, something that had nothing to do with the curse. She turned back, not because of obligation, not because of strategy, not because walking away would damage the containment or break some ancient rule or cause consequences she hadn't planned for. She turned back because she couldn't leave her there alone. That was the whole truth of it. The ground trembled, not lightly, not subtly, hard and immediate. The walls of the castle shuddered as dark energy surged violently through the space, the fractured mirror at the far end cracking again, deeper this time, something beneath it no longer waiting, breaking through. The guard staggered back in fear. "My lady, go," Seraphine said. He hesitated. "Go," she repeated, sharper this time. And this time he ran. Seraphine turned slowly toward the mirror. The cracks spread wider, faster. The darkness behind it no longer contained. "Of course," she murmured. Her hand lifted slightly, the mark flaring in response, the connection snapping alive again. Stronger, deeper, hungry. "You waited," she said quietly. The voice answered. "Not from the mirror, from everywhere. You chose wrong." Seraphine's jaw tightened. "I didn't choose you. You always were." The darkness surged. The mirror shattered completely this time, and it stepped through. Not distorted anymore, not incomplete. Something closer to whole, something ancient, something that had been waiting for this moment. Seraphine didn't move, didn't run, didn't step back, because now she understood. "You're what they broke," she said. The entity tilted its head slightly, "and you are what remains." The mark burned, brighter, stronger, pulling, calling, demanding. Seraphine's breath hitched slightly as the connection tightened, her body reacting before her mind could catch up. And for a moment she almost stepped forward. The shadows cut through the room, violent, sharp, immediate. The darkness recoiled as Morrigan appeared between them, her presence crashing into the space like a storm, her power rising instantly, wrapping around Seraphine before anything else could reach her. No, that word was not calm, was not controlled, it was raw. Seraphine froze. "You came back," she said. Morrigan didn't look at her. "I told you not to answer it. I wasn't, you were." The words came fast and sharp, because she had seen it, because she had felt it, because she knew. The entity shifted, watching them. "You cannot separate what is already bound." Morrigan's shadows surged harder, darker than before, pressing against it with force. "Watch me." This time there was no hesitation, no control, no distance, only intent. The room trembled violently as power collided, shadows and darkness clashing in sharp bursts of energy that cracked through the floor, the walls, the air itself. Seraphine felt it, all of it, the pull, the connection, the pressure building too fast. "Morrigan," she started. "Don't move." That came instantly. Fierce, protective, not controlled, not distant, real. The entity surged again, stronger, targeting her, always her. And this time it broke through. A strand of darkness snapped toward Seraphine, wrapping around her wrist, the mark blazing in response as the connection exploded outward, pulling her forward. "Morrigan." She didn't finish, because Morrigan moved, faster than anything Seraphine had ever seen. Her hand caught Seraphine's wrist mid-pull, yanking her back, her other hand rising instantly as her power surged forward, cutting through the darkness and ripping it away completely. "Don't touch her." That was not strategy. That was not control. That was personal. The entity recoiled, not defeated, but held. "You cannot protect her from what she is." Morrigan's voice dropped. "I don't need to." A breath. "I just need to keep you away from her." The shadows surged one last time. Overwhelming, forcing the entity back piece by piece until the space snapped shut again, the darkness collapsing inward, sealed for now. Silence followed, heavy, shaking, real. Seraphine's breathing was uneven, her hands still in Morrigan's, still held tightly, like she hadn't let go, like she didn't want to. "You came back," she said again, quieter this time. Morrigan didn't answer immediately, because she was still holding her, because she hadn't stepped away, because she couldn't. Seraphine's voice softened. You said you wouldn't. Morrigan's jaw tightened. I lied. That almost made Seraphine laugh. Almost. You're not very good at that, she said. Morrigan finally looked at her, and this time there was no distance, no coldness, no control, just her. No, she said quietly. I'm not. The mark pulsed, not violently, not painfully, steady and aligned, and this time neither of them pulled away from it. Seraphine's gaze dropped briefly to their hands, then back up. You said you wouldn't stop them, she said softly. Morrigan's voice lowered. I was wrong. You're wrong a lot. That's new. Seraphine's lips curved faintly. I like it. That shouldn't have been said. But it was, and neither of them took it back. The air shifted again. Not dangerous. Not tense. Something else. Closer. Quieter. Seraphine's voice dropped. You were going to let me die, she said. Morrigan's gaze didn't waver. I wasn't. You said you would. I was lying. You just said you're bad at that. I am. A breath passed between them. Except when it matters, that landed, because this time it wasn't defensive. It was honest. Seraphine looked at her for a long moment. The letter, she said quietly. Morrigan went still. I sent it on the second night, Seraphine said, before the bird told me anything, before you explained about your grandmother, before I understood what any of this actually was. She didn't look away. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought getting them here would end this. I thought that was what protecting my kingdom meant. Morrigan's expression didn't change, but she was listening. By the time I understood the truth, Seraphine continued, the letter was already gone. They were already coming, and pushing you away was the only thing I could think of to keep you out of its path. Her voice was very quiet now. Because that thing in the mirror wasn't just coming for me. It would have come for you too, through me, through the connection. She exhaled slowly. I couldn't let that happen. Morrigan was quiet for a long moment. That was the reason, Seraphine said simply. Not strategy, not the kingdom. She met her eyes directly. You. The silence that followed was different from all the silences before it. Not tense, not sharp, not heavy with accusation. Just real. You should have told me, Morrigan said finally. You would have argued. I would have. And then you would have done exactly what you did anyway. Seraphine's lips curved slightly. You came back. Morrigan looked at her for a long moment. You're still infuriating, she said. Seraphine's smile widened just slightly. You came back anyway. Morrigan didn't argue. Because she had. Because she always would. Because that was already decided the moment she turned around at the edge of the forest. The soldiers, Seraphine said suddenly. Morrigan's expression shifted slightly. Already handled. Seraphine blinked. When? Before I came back. A pause. They won't reach this castle. Seraphine stared at her. You stopped them. I redirected them. That's the same thing. It isn't. Seraphine let out a quiet breath that was almost a laugh. You protected the kingdom. Morrigan's expression returned to something carefully neutral. I protected you from having to explain a massacre. That sounds like caring. It was practical. It really wasn't. Morrigan didn't argue, because it wasn't. Because none of this was practical anymore. Because practical had stopped being possible somewhere around the time she started showing up uninvited and not leaving. Seraphine stepped closer. Not forced, not pulled, chosen. You chose me, she said quietly. Morrigan didn't deny it, because she couldn't anymore, because there was no point. Yes, that word changed everything. The distance between them disappeared, not suddenly, not dramatically, just gone. Seraphine's breath slowed. You hate my kingdom, she said. Morrigan's voice was softer now. I do, and you were going to destroy it. Yes. A pause. But not you. That was the line, the one that broke whatever was left of the distance between them. Seraphine's voice dropped. That sounds like a problem. Morrigan's lips parted slightly. It is. Seraphine stepped closer, just enough. For who? Morrigan didn't answer, because she didn't need to, because it was obvious, because it was both of them. The mark pulsed, soft, warm, and this time it didn't interrupt. It pulled them closer. Gently. Naturally, like it wasn't forcing anything anymore, like it didn't need to. Seraphine's voice softened. You're still holding me, she said. Morrigan's hand tightened slightly. I know. Are you going to let go? No. That did something. Something quiet. Something deep. Seraphine's gaze dropped and lifted again. Good, she said softly. Morrigan moved first. Not fast. Not sharp. Slow and deliberate, like she was giving her time to step back. Time to stop it. Time to say no. Seraphine didn't move. Didn't step back. Didn't stop her. Because she wasn't afraid. Because she wanted this. Because she chose it. Morrigan's hand lifted slowly, brushing lightly against her face, her fingers pausing just for a second like she was still deciding. Then settling. Gentle. Careful. Different. Seraphine's breath caught slightly. Not from fear, from something else. You're hesitating again, she whispered. Morrigan's voice was barely there. This is different. Seraphine's lips curved faintly. Good. And this time Morrigan didn't stop. She leaned in, slow, certain, closing the distance completely, and when their lips met, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't soft. It was everything they hadn't said. Tension, anger, relief, choice, all at once. Seraphine's hand moved instinctively, gripping the front of Morrigan's gown slightly as she pulled her closer, not letting her pull away, not letting the moment break. Because she knew if it broke now, it might not come back. Morrigan responded instantly, her control slipping just enough, her hand tightening slightly against her face as she deepened the kiss. Not gentle anymore, not careful, real, raw, unfiltered. The world around them didn't matter. The kingdom, the curse, the danger. None of it existed in that moment. Just this. When they finally pulled apart, it wasn't far. Just enough to breathe. Just enough to look at each other. Just enough to realize everything had changed. Seraphine's voice was softer now. That complicates things. Morrigan's lips curved faintly. It does. We're still going to stop it, Seraphine said. Morrigan nodded slightly. We will. This time neither of them hesitated. The mark pulsed. Soft. Steady, no pain, no resistance, just connection. Just two people who had started as enemies and become something neither of them had a word for yet. Something they would figure out together. And somewhere deep beneath the kingdom, something waited. Not gone, not finished, but no longer uncontested. Because now they weren't standing against each other anymore. They were standing together. And that changed everything. Voldemort did not become beautiful again overnight. The skies did not suddenly turn bright. The darkness beneath the kingdom did not disappear. Some wounds were simply too old for that. But the screaming stopped. The shadows no longer spread through the villages at night. The forest no longer swallowed travelers whole. And for the first time in years, children laughed without fear. That alone felt unnatural. The kingdom still feared Morrigan. Of course they did. People lowered their eyes when she walked through the streets. Guards stiffened when shadows moved near the palace walls. Mothers still pulled their children closer whenever whispers of the witch spread through the city. And Morrigan did not care. She walked through the kingdom in black and crimson like a living warning, her presence sharp and untouchable, the air itself seeming to darken slightly whenever she appeared. But she no longer looked at the people of Voldemort with hatred, only distance. And somehow, that was already mercy. The curse remained, but it changed. No longer feeding on the kingdom, no longer punishing the innocent. Now, it sealed, protected. Buried the entity deeper beneath the land where it could no longer reach the surface so easily. Morrigan had not removed the curse. She had reforged it. And only two people in the entire kingdom understood what that truly meant. Seraphine stood at the balcony overlooking Voldemort, the cold wind moving softly through her hair as the kingdom stretched endlessly beneath her. Her kingdom. It felt strange thinking that now. Not because she doubted herself, but because everything had changed so quickly. A quiet pulse warmed her wrist. Soft. The mark. It no longer hurt. Now, it felt like presence, awareness, connection, and somewhere behind her she felt Morrigan before she even spoke. You're staring again. Morrigan's voice came calmly from behind her. You're in front of a window. That's not what I meant. I know. Seraphine smiled faintly. Some things never changed. Morrigan stepped beside her slowly, dressed in deep crimson and black, elegant as always, dangerous as ever. Even now, even after everything, she still looked like the kind of woman kingdoms wrote warnings about. Maybe they still would. Seraphine glanced sideways at her. They're still terrified of you. Morrigan looked out over the kingdom. Good. That made Seraphine laugh softly. There she is. Morrigan's gaze flicked briefly toward her. You say that like I disappeared. You became less homicidal. I became selective. That is not better. It is to me. Seraphine shook her head slightly, the smile still lingering. Gods, when did this become normal? The wind shifted softly around them, peaceful, almost. Seraphine's voice lowered slightly. You stayed. Morrigan's gaze remained fixed ahead. Yes, you could have left, I know, a pause. Then, but I didn't, that still did something to her. Every time. Seraphine turned slightly toward her. So what are you now? She asked quietly. Morrigan's lips curved faintly. Still a witch. That was never in question. And you're still annoying. That sounds affectionate. It isn't. Seraphine smiled wider. Sure. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't empty. Not anymore. Below them, the kingdom moved on. People rebuilding homes. Markets reopening. Life returning slowly to a place that had forgotten how to hope. And beneath it all, far below the kingdom, the darkness still slept, waiting, breathing. But now, it was no longer waiting for Seraphine alone. Now, there were two of them standing against it, together. Morrigan's hand brushed lightly against hers. Not accidental, not hesitant. Chosen. Seraphine's breath softened slightly as their fingers intertwined naturally, the mark pulsing once beneath her skin warm and calm. No pain, no chaos. Just her. Morrigan's voice lowered slightly. If it wakes again, Seraphine looked at her. Then we stop it again. A pause. Then, together. This time, Morrigan smiled. Small, real, and somehow that felt more powerful than magic ever could, because the kingdom had feared the witch for years. But in the end, the thing that saved Voldemort was not the curse, not the crown, not destiny. It was simply the moment the witch chose to love something more than her hatred. And for Morrigan of the Dark, that had always been the most dangerous magic of all.
And that's a wrap on today's story. I hope it got you. I hope you laughed. I hope you felt something, because that's exactly why we're here.
If you're new to GL YuriTales, welcome! You found your people. We drop brand new original GL stories every Tuesday, every Thursday, and every Saturday. So hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you never miss a story. Thank you so much. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and remember, the best love stories are always the complicated ones. See you soon.